You signed a contract that gave strangers the power to fine you, foreclose on your property, and control what color you paint your door. You agreed to let a volunteer board decide whether your grass is too long, your car is too old, or your holiday decorations stayed up too late. You bought a home in America, land of private property, and you handed a committee the legal authority to take it from you. This is not about bad neighbors. This is about a system designed to transfer your autonomy to people with no accountability, no training, and no oversight. And it is already happening to 75 million Americans living inside homeowners associations. The promise was simple. Move into a planned community with maintained landscaping, fresh paint, and rules that keep property values high. The HOA would handle the pool, the clubhouse, the gate code. You would pay a small monthly fee and enjoy the benefits of organized living. But that small fee is the entry point into a legal structure that puts your home under permanent supervision. Every decision you make about your property now requires approval. Every mistake you make now carries a monetary penalty. And the people enforcing those rules are your neighbors, untrained and often unelected, wielding the same foreclosure power as a bank. Here is what most buyers do not realize until it is too late. An HOA is not a neighborhood watch. It is a private governing body with the legal authority to place a lien on your home, charge you compounding interest on unpaid fines, and foreclose without a mortgage default. It operates outside the constraints that limit government power. It does not have to provide due process. It does not have to prove harm. It does not even have to be reasonable. Courts in most states defer to HOA authority as long as the board followed its own procedures, no matter how absurd the rule or how devastating the penalty. This trap has 3 ancestors in the last century, and all of them relied on the same core mechanism, turning property into permission. The first is company towns. In the early 1900s, industrial corporations built entire communities for their workers. The company owned the homes, the stores, the streets. Workers rented from their employer and paid with company scrip. If you were fired, you lost your housing. If you violated company rules, you lost access to goods. The system created total dependence. You could not quit without losing everything. The psychological lever was simple. Tie survival to compliance. Make the cost of exit unbearable. HOAs inherited this model. Instead of renting from a company, you own property under a corporate covenant that never expires. The second is redlining and exclusionary zoning. In the mid-20th century, developers and banks created neighborhood covenants to control who could buy homes and what those homes could look like. Racial restrictions were the most notorious, but aesthetic and financial covenants were just as binding. These private agreements allowed wealthy neighborhoods to exclude people based on income, occupation, and behavior. When courts struck down racial covenants, developers shifted to HOAs as the legal vehicle for maintaining control. The psychological lever was status and exclusion. If you want to live among the right people, you submit to the rules. HOAs are the direct descendants of this exclusionary framework. The third is the rise of planned unit developments in the 1960s and 70s. As suburban sprawl accelerated, local governments could not keep up with infrastructure costs. Developers offered a deal. Let us build entire neighborhoods with private roads, private parks, and private maintenance, and we will offload the cost from taxpayers. Municipalities agreed, but the cost was not eliminated. It was transferred to homeowners in the form of mandatory HOA fees and binding covenants. And the psychological lever was the illusion of ownership. You bought the home, but you leased the right to live in it without interference. The developer walked away. The HOA stayed forever. Now let us map the trap you are inside. This brings us to stage 1. The disclosure buried in closing documents. When you buy a home in an HOA, you receive a stack of governing documents. The CC&Rs, the bylaws, the architectural guidelines, the budget reports, hundreds of pages of legalese delivered days before closing when you are already emotionally and financially committed. Most buyers never read them. Even if they do not have the legal training to understand what they are signing. And here is the mechanism at work. By signing, you agree to let the HOA amend its own rules with a simple majority vote of the board. You are binding yourself to a legal framework that can change after you buy. The older parallel is clear. You are signing a contract that gives the other party unilateral power to rewrite the terms. Then comes stage 2, the fee structure that never stops growing. Your HOA fee starts small, maybe $150 a month, maybe $200. The board tells you it covers landscaping, insurance, reserves for future repairs, but the fee is not fixed. Every year, the board votes to raise it. And in most HOAs, they only need a majority of board members to approve the increase, not a majority of homeowners. Over 10 years, your fee can double. Over 20 years, it can triple. And you have no power to stop it. If you do not pay, the HOA can place a lien on your home. If the lien goes unpaid, they can foreclose. The psychological lever is the sunk cost fallacy. You already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in the property. Walking away means losing everything. Paying means bleeding slowly. Stage 3 is where the system turns from annoying to predatory. The violation and fine cycle. HOA boards have the authority to inspect your property and issue violations for nearly anything. Your fence is 6 inches too tall. Your mailbox is the wrong shade of black. You parked your car in your own driveway overnight, but the covenant says all vehicles must be garaged. Each violation comes with a fine. $50, $100, sometimes more. And if you do not pay within the deadline, the HOA adds late fees and interest. In some states, that interest compounds daily. A $100 fine for a mailbox can become $500 in 6 months. The modern mechanic is automated enforcement. Some HOAs now use drone surveillance and license plate readers to catch violations. Your neighbors are not watching you. The system is. Stage 4 is the escalation to lien and foreclosure. Most people assume that if they ignore HOA fines, the worst that can happen is a collections call. They are wrong. HOAs can place a lien on your property for any unpaid fees or fines, no matter how small. That lien takes priority over almost everything, including your mortgage in some states. Once the lien is in place, the HOA can foreclose, and here is the nightmare. They do not need to prove you owe a legitimate debt. They only need to prove they followed their own internal procedures. Courts rarely intervene. In Texas, an HOA foreclosed on a home over $800 in unpaid fees. In Florida, a woman lost her home over a dispute about the color of her roses. The sale price at foreclosure auction is often a fraction of the home's value. The HOA recovers its fees. You lose everything. This is where most people discover they are trapped. Stage 5 is the realization that you cannot sell your way out. When you try to sell a home with an HOA lien, the lien must be paid at closing. But the amount owed is often inflated with legal fees, interest, and penalties the HOA added after you stop paying. In some cases, the lien exceeds the equity in the home. You cannot sell without writing a check. And if you walk away, the HOA forecloses anyway, destroying your credit and leaving you with a deficiency judgment. The psychological lever is total enclosure. Every exit is blocked. Compliance is the only option. Stage 6 is the governance capture that makes reform impossible. In theory, homeowners can vote out a bad HOA board. In practice, this almost never happens. Most HOAs require a quorum to hold elections, and most homeowners do not show up. The people who do show up are often the same small group of retirees, busybodies, and power seekers who thrive on rule enforcement. Once they control the board, they can amend the bylaws to make removal even harder. They can require supermajority votes. They can stagger terms. They can appoint their friends to committees that control the nomination process. The homeowner majority is atomized, busy, and disengaged. The board is organized, motivated, and legally empowered. This is governance by the most aggressive minority. Let me show you the math behind this mechanism. The average HOA collects between $2,000 and $3,000 per home per year in fees. Multiply that by 300 homes in a medium-sized community, and you are looking at $750,000 in annual revenue. Add in fines, late fees, and special assessments, and the number climbs past $1 million. The money flows into accounts controlled by a volunteer board with no financial oversight requirement in most states. There is no audit unless the homeowners demand one. There is no transparency unless the bylaws require it. And the bylaws were written by the developer who sold the homes and disappeared. Here is where the incentive structure reveals itself. HOA management companies profit from enforcement. They charge the HOA a flat fee to manage operations, but they also charge homeowners directly for violation, letters, lien filings, and legal actions. Every fine generates paperwork. Every lien generates a fee. The management company has no incentive to de-escalate. The board has no incentive to push back because the management company handles the dirty work. Homeowners are billed for the cost of their own punishment. This is not a conspiracy. This is a business model. Now check yourself against the pattern. If you live in an HOA and you have paid a fine in the last 2 years, you are in stage 3. If you have ever received a violation notice for something you thought was trivial, you are being conditioned for escalation. If your HOA fees have increased every year without a clear breakdown of expenses, you are funding governance capture. If you have ever thought about selling just to escape the rules, you are already inside stage 5. And if you have never attended an HOA meeting, because it feels pointless, you have handed control to the people who show up. The system does not need your participation. It needs your passivity. Let me tell you what happens when passivity becomes permanent. HOAs are now the dominant form of new residential development in the United States. 80% of new homes built since 2000 are governed by an HOA. In some states, it is nearly impossible to buy a single-family home without joining one. Developers prefer HOAs because they shift long-term costs to homeowners and allow for higher density construction. Municipalities prefer HOAs because they reduce the tax burden of maintaining infrastructure. Lenders prefer HOAs because they believe covenant enforcement protects property values. Every incentive in the system pushes toward more HOAs, stricter rules, and less homeowner power. This is the silent phase of the trap. The moment when the mechanism becomes normal. The moment when you stop questioning why a volunteer can fine you for planting the wrong flower. The silent phase is when you accept that owning property means obeying people who do not own it. That sentence is the hinge. Repeat it. Owning property means obeying people who do not own it. That is the inversion HOAs created. You hold the title, they hold the power, and the power is growing. Some HOAs now require pre-approval for house guests. Some ban certain dog breeds. Some prohibit working from home if clients visit the property. Some require homeowners to submit floor plans before any interior renovation. These are not extreme examples. These are real rules enforced in American suburbs right now. And because HOAs operate as private entities, constitutional protections do not apply. There is no freedom of speech in an HOA. There is no protection against unreasonable search. There is no right to a jury trial before your home is taken. Here is the survival payoff. You do not need to quit home ownership. You need to stop playing this game on their terms. First, if you are buying a home, treat the HOA documents like a prenuptial agreement with someone who hates you. Read every page. Hire a lawyer who specializes in HOA law to review the CC&Rs before you close. Look for provisions that allow fee increases without homeowner votes. Look for foreclosure clauses that prioritize HOA lines over mortgages. Look for amendment processes that require only board approval. If the documents give the board unchecked power, walk away. No home is worth entering a system designed to take it from you. Second, if you already live in an HOA, engage immediately and strategically. Attend every meeting. Read every budget. Request copies of the management contract. Demand an independent audit of HOA finances. Run for the board or recruit someone you trust to run. The only way to stop governance capture is to occupy the structure before it occupies you. The busybodies win because no one else shows up. Show up.